I'm Armando Fox. I'm a computer science professor at Berkeley. I'm also the faculty advisor for the MOOC Lab, which is the part of Berkeley that sort of oversees and facilitates faculty across all departments who are interested in doing MOOCs. And in that capacity, I guess I'm something of a liaison to edX. I'm also on their technical advisory committee. So I sort of have a few different hats. But the hat that I mentioned first is the faculty hat, and I both teach reasonably large computer science courses and I'm doing research on them. That's, I think, the hat that I can speak on this panel for. A couple of years ago, Carlos and John Mitchell and I and a few others who I think are in the room were co-organizers of a Dagstuhl seminar on the present and hopefully future state of online education. And I actually think that's one of the relatively few committees of its kind that I've been on that actually produced a report that's worth reading. I've read it myself. That's how good it is. As a co-author, I thought it was great. But we sort of laid out some of the conclusions and talking points as a series of provocative statements or questions. And one of them was rich despite scale or rich because of scale. And it was exactly this question that we were trying to get to. Are there, there was sort of a lot of hand-wringing in the early days of MOOCs about all the wonderful, magical things that would go away if you scaled up from a modest number of students to a much larger number of students. And we were trying to identify things that go in the other direction. So I'll give one quick example from my own experience at Berkeley and then let the other panelists speak. At Berkeley, we have a sort of a unique problem, especially in computer science, because of exploding demand. So we're actually being forced to do things in our residential courses that people only think of at MOOC scale. Our introductory CS course has 1,400 students this semester. My upper division software engineering course, primarily juniors and seniors, has 240 students, and that's because we capped it at 240. The demand was for more than double that. But what we found is we actually started building tools that take advantage of the data from student answers and student performance, which is increasingly machine collected, and you start mining it for interesting patterns. And what I found is that the scale is actually helping me as an instructor get a much better handle on the ways in which students make mistakes, the problem-solving approaches they take. I didn't know if we were going to be allowed slides or not, but if we had slides, you'd be looking at a slide of clustering programming assignments based on the macro-level structure of the algorithms used to solve a programming problem. The instructor can sort of clearly see what the different categories are. You can hover over one and see an individual solution. We can connect them all into a big graph and give students hints on how to improve their solution based on a student who did a little bit better than them. So these are all things that, with an N of less than a couple of hundred, it just doesn't work. So as an instructor, I think what this is doing is actually raising the bar for what students expect. They're going to expect feedback that is not just from an instructor, but that is also in some way based on what their peers have done. So let me pause with that and not dominate the panel, but onward.
Okay, so hi, my name is Katherine McConachie. I am a researcher and designer at the Learning Initiative at the MIT Media Lab. And what we do there is basically try and design learning experiences and technologies that enhance those learning experiences that with the goal of helping people to think and learn in a creative way. And what I mean by that is we focus on learning that is project-based, where people are working on things that they deeply care about. They're working with their peers, and they're doing it in an environment that makes it feel like it's safe to fail. So that's sort of like the learning theory that's embedded in all of the design and technology that we try and build. So a while back, we became interested in sort of how we could translate this kind of learning into an online space. And we took one of the courses that we usually run in person at the Media Lab and put it online. And it was called Learning Creative Learning. And in order to do that, we found we were encountering a lot of technical problems because we couldn't find the tools that we wanted to enable collaboration, to enable projects, to enable really hands-on activities. And this is the type of thing that help to enable the type of learning that we like. And often we couldn't really find it in the traditional MOOCs that we were seeing. So we've built a couple technologies, but I think that experience of not finding what we want sort of led us to do this. Led us to this question of why is it that so many MOOCs end up looking the same? And one of the things about that is that video is a core component of nearly every MOOC that's out there, and we sort of were wondering why that is. And so we ended up doing a report, interviewing a lot of practitioners and people who work with the video and are designing these courses. And a few things that I'd just like to share with you about that I think that are very interesting from that report are that video is really expensive to make. It's often the biggest budget item in any online course, but there's really little research that shows that high production value video is actually helpful for learning. And so with that in mind, I think that I would like to say that it seems really interesting to sort of rethink how we can use video for learning. I think there aren't enough people who are experimenting with new and interesting ways of using video. And there also, because of that, there isn't any research on those new and interesting ways of using video. So some of those might be that video is really a great way when we think of online scaling. Video is a great way of scaling collaboration online and scaling intimacy that you don't maybe get from just looking at a web page. And so I guess we just want to see more people designing platforms like this and more people researching them. And I will mention one more thing, which is we sort of have our own response to this. And since it sort of came up in a question that someone said earlier, we have a platform that is based on the unconference model that we've been using with a lot of MOOC providers from HarvardX and MITx, and it's called Unhangout. It's basically a way to scale. It's an open source platform for scaling large unconferences on the web, and it's been really interesting to see how course designers have been able to sort of incorporate this into their MOOCs. So I'm also happy to sort of comment about what that does and how we're thinking about it. So.
I don't know about Unhangout. I'm gonna have to ask you about that later. Hi, my name is Beth Porter. I'm the head of the product management organization at edX. I spent a lot of time figuring out what our roadmap is gonna be and urging our engineers to build what we asked them to build. But I also spent an enormous amount of time with the Open edX community, and I'm really delighted to be here to support Lorena, this conference, the whole community, and every open source effort that is adjacent to it and is trying to solve many of the same goals that we're trying to solve with our open source effort. So a couple of things that I think of, and by the way, I'm pretty much not saying anything new right now, except just amplifying some things that got said earlier, because all of you made such wonderful comments throughout the morning and early afternoon. So those will sound familiar, and I'll say a few things about each person who said them. But for me, the real goals of this massive movement are really back to our original mission at edX, which is about reach and being able to actually imagine a world in which people can attain education, no matter where they live, no matter what kind of device they have to get it on, what their economic status is, everything. We really do still hold on to that as a part of our mission. And we expect never to achieve that ourselves, ever. We expect only to be able to achieve that by having a whole community of people like you and all the other people who are part of Open edX and other similar movements to be able to do that together. We will never get the audacious goal that Anant Agarwal, our head of the organization, often cites, we'll get to a billion learners. We will never get to a billion learners. We, with you, may get to a billion learners. So for us, things that you can do at scale that you can't do by yourself in small, isolated ways are all about reach. Second thing I want to mention is really about data collection. And again, I'm not saying anything differently really than anybody else has said already this morning, but I just want to say again how important it is to us, particularly given the comments that George just made, about keeping our platform open, about keeping everything that we do out in the open. And our data collection algorithms, the way that we do data is all open, just like everything else. Our source code is out there for people to use as they see fit or extend or replace. So we understand that that's a really, really important aspect of being able to run a successful Open edX instance, whether it's all by itself or joined with lots of other technologies. And then the third thing I'll mention is something that Carolyn really spoke more nicely about than I'm about to say, is the opportunity for interaction. So I know I won't be able to quote a particular paper, but many papers have been written about the value of interacting with people who are different from yourselves to extend your opportunities to learn in ways that you never would have been able to just interacting with people who are just like you, or just in your one place. And so, again, I think that scale learning allows, or at least affords the opportunity to interact with people in a MOOC environment who you may never, in any other circumstance, get an opportunity to interact with, and thereby really learn in a new way than you might ever have been able to have an opportunity to do before. So for me, those are the big three.
Thanks. So I'm Toni Marsh, and thank you, Beth. I actually, when you saw me whispering to her, I said, can I go next? Can I go next? Because what I wanted to talk about today directly responded to what Katherine says, but then I said, no, let's just stick with her. She very graciously said, go ahead, but then I said, no, that's okay, so thank you. But I am a professor here at GW, and I'm Associate Dean for New Initiatives. But as a professor, I run a fully online program, master's degree program. And when I say I mean we, because there's a team. And I also, in my role as Associate Dean, oversee a lot of other people's online programs as well. And what I wanted to talk about today was engagement. And I actually, we've been talking about scale and thousands and hundreds and millions and billions of learners, but really, there's only one learner, and that's the person across the screen. That's the person sitting at the screen all by himself, looking at what you are giving to him or her. And so I'm really focused on that one learner and bringing the scale down much smaller. Now, interestingly, on the topic of, and so what you do to that learner to make sure that that learner isn't just a lost and isolated soul, who has this content sort of washing over him or her, is you need to really engage that person and let that person know that he or she is part of a community, and really build that community and build that, and you do that through engagement. So interestingly, on the topic of video, so in one of my classes, we've got evaluations. We, of course, student evaluations. And on a scale of 1 to 5, I was reading my evaluations for one course. Now, although I had been very, very deeply involved in this course every step of the way, I designed it, I monitored it, I read all of the assignments, I provided written feedback, I did all of the things that you do. And I had all these like beautiful pre-recorded videos that I went to the GW Media Center and recorded. One of the questions was something like, how, please rate your professor, or, how do you view your professor? And one of the students, the comment was, what professor? And my average on those evaluations that semester were like in the mid-3s. And so I thought, I'm here, but they don't know I'm here, and I need to find a way to let them know that I'm here. And so I started this thing where I started recording these videos once a week, every Friday morning. I used Vimeo. I used my laptop. I learned all the tricks. You put the laptop high so you get the angles, right, and the front lighting. But other than that, it was just me sitting there in front of my laptop, and I'd say, wow, it's, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody, if it was March, or, wow, I hope it's not snowing as hard where you are as it is here in DC, because it's only October and we've already got snow, things like that. So they knew that it was the time and the place, it was spontaneous. And then, of course, I would say, discussion was great this week. The person who brought up that case that happened in Colorado, that was fascinating, really added a lot to the discussion. Thank you for that. So that was it. Just those videos, and they were dumb. I mean, there was no real content there. It was like, it's snowing here in DC, and wow, great discussion. Thank you, everyone. And the next evaluation, the next semester, my evaluations were straight 5s, and I didn't do a thing to the content of the course. But they knew I was there, they understood I was there, they knew I was a human, that I was watching them, that I cared about them, and it changed how they felt about the course. So, that's just my little story about how important it is, and yes, absolutely. In fact, those beautifully recorded videos that I had posted in every module went probably unwatched. But those little weekly videos, they loved and they asked for more. So now we do it universally throughout all of my programs. And that is just one example of engagement. You've got to keep it real and you've got to keep it personal. So we do tons. That's what I focus on. As much as the content, as much as I focus on the content, I focus on engagement. And I'm sure you all know all of the many things that you can do, but we do it all, and we are constantly fussing with engagement. So we're experimenting now this semester. We're experimenting with synchronous video, with synchronous. We're using WebEx for short class meetings. We use the pre-recorded videos. We use, of course, the discussion boards. We have IRL meetups. Whenever I travel anywhere in the country, I go through my database, I find out where my students are, how many students I've got in Houston, and I send them an email. I say, I'm going to be in Houston. Somebody come by and say hello to me. I'm speaking at Houston Paralegal Association. Let me take you to lunch. I encourage them to meet up with each other. I promote my students throughout the program. So my A1 star students, I invite to become instructional assistants when they graduate with their master's degrees. And eventually those good instructional assistants become professors. So this is all to keep them engaged and connected. I will take my iPhone out and I'll go walk around the university. I'll take my laptop and say, here's my office. Here's my flag collection. Look, I have a window that opens. Don't tell anybody, by the way, because it's very coveted. But I'll show you, I show these things. And this is what keeps it real and personal, and that's what keeps that connection between me and the person on the other side of the screen, and it's what keeps them involved and happy.
Probably some of you have seen this image, the elephant. You can look at it from different angles, and then it's either a wall, a rope, a tree, a fan, etc. So I've adapted, an elephant is massive, I've adapted this to the massive MOOCs. Depending on which side you look at it, it's a MOOC, or some people started talking about campus MOOCs, but then Armando invented the word Spock, and so we are speaking about Spocks. E-book, it's something similar because you have videos, you have assessments, interactive assessments, so it's somehow related, but a bit different. It's a flipped class. Flipped class, you can use the content of a MOOC for a flipped class. It's blended learning, or it's digital education in general. Well, what I'm going to propose, or what I'm going to talk about, is as we saw this problem with before, everything is hybrid, so learning is hybrid, and it's partially face-to-face and partially digital. And maybe we should move the two worlds much more together. No? For instance, face-to-face lectures are presently moving to becoming more partially digital, no? By using clickers, by using apps like Socrates. Backstage is a software done in Munich, where they have a parallel conversation where the professor is speaking the lecture, and in parallel there are assistants responding to the students, and this other parallel conversation, or you can have online quizzes. So lectures, face-to-face lectures, are becoming slowly more and more digital, and in the same way, digital MOOCs or other content is also becoming more personal, more local, with local meeting groups, with personal mentoring. Here I have to acknowledge again Armando with his company, Mentif.co, or social viewing. I took this slide from the Willem book, where students come together to look at the videos of a MOOC and then comment about it. So this is also the social component, which is also very important. So we have, in a way, and then we have flipped classrooms, etc. So in a way, we have a kind of a continuum where, on the one hand, we have the pure face-to-face, the pure digital, and what we are seeing is these two sides coming together successively. We had last year at the Learning with MOOCs conference, the first one at MIT, a very nice session where we, with the audience, we talked about different models that people were using on how to combine the MOOC or the digital and the face-to-face by putting first the MOOC and then face-to-face, or putting it in parallel. So this was a kind of course combination of these two, but what we have to look is for other combination methods that are more fine-grained, to have elements that are important for learning, motivation, reflection, practice, etc., to have them combined in a very fine way where you use the digital and the face-to-face in interesting ways. I think the problem we have is that we don't see the elephant in the room. You know, the concepts are somehow the glue that put our mental models together, and sometimes they don't allow us to see what are the possibilities behind. So you have to think out of the concept or think out of the box in order to combine what is possible to define and encounter and give names to new models that combine the digital and the physical. So to finalize, MOOCs have been the loud disruptive change in education, but there's another much more quieter change that is deeply affecting the traditional education, where digital is coming more into the lecture halls, and MOOCs have to become more personal, and traditional education has to become more digital, because education has to become more and more hybrid. We had a very nice conversation this July in Toledo, where Armando was here, Lorena was there, Dave Pritchard and others, where we started to talk about this hybrid education, and we're going to have another workshop at the Frontier of Education this October, next October, where we will continue talking about possible hybrid models for education. Thank you very much.